You're finished once we're home. Preston didn't whisper it. He didn't even try to be discreet. His voice sliced across the crisp white tablecloth, past the flickering candle in its ruby glass, loud enough that the family in the corner booth paused mid-laugh over their tiramisu. Amira's fork froze halfway to her mouth. The lamb she'd been so carefully slicing, because God forbid she tore it like some uncultured animal and gave him another reason to correct her, suddenly looked like a mistake on a blueprint. Before we begin, share where you're listening from, and let us know what you think of Amira's journey at the end. Let's dive into a tale that reminds us what really matters. Hi, my beautiful family. Let's start with a blessing. Dear Lord, I ask you to surround every person watching with strength, clarity, and fearless love. Amen. You are not just an audience. You are my family, the reason I speak truth into the dark. For those who are new here, welcome to the family. Please subscribe, drop a "I'm here" in the comments, and let's walk this path together. Each story I bring is my sacrifice and devotion. When you click away early, it feels like the fight was left unfinished. Please stay with me through the journey until the very end. I love you always. Now let us begin. I asked you a simple question. Preston continued, his jaw clenched like a vice. Were you eyeing that waiter?
No.
Her voice came out smaller than she intended. I said, "Thank you. That's all." You curled your lips at him. I was being courteous. You don't curl your lips at other men. His hand shot across the table and clamped her wrist. Not hard enough to mark where the sleeve could hide it, never hard enough for proof, but tight enough that her pulse throbbed against his fingers. Do you understand me? This was how it always went. A special dinner, his idea, always his idea, would start polished enough. He'd veto her menu choice, of course, because he knew what suited a woman built like her. He'd nitpick her curls, how she should have straightened them instead of this natural mess that made her look unkempt. And then inevitably something would ignite him. A perceived defiance, an imagined slight, and she'd atone for it later in the car at home, in 1,000 invisible cuts that never scarred the surface. I understand, she said quietly.
Good.
He released her wrist and lifted his wine glass. Because when we get home, you and I are going to have a long conversation about gratitude. The threat lingered like garlic in the air. Amira's stomach nodded. She knew what those conversations looked like. They started with him looming in the doorway, continued with her backed against the counter, his voice rising, his breath too close, his shadow swallowing every escape. They ended with her begging forgiveness for sins she hadn't committed, vowing to shrink further, sobbing into her pillow while he snored peacefully beside her as if the storm had never raged. 2 years of this, and she still hadn't summoned the strength to walk. She glanced down at her engagement ring, a cold platinum band he'd selected without her input, and felt the weight of it like an anchor. "Eat your food," Preston said. "You're making a scene." She was making a scene. Of course, it's always her fault. Amira reached for her fork again, but her hand trembled now. The rosemary butter blurred through the tears she refused to let fall. Not here. Not in public. That would only make it worse. She didn't notice the man one booth over. Not at first. He was sitting alone, which stood out on a Friday night at Carmine's, the hidden gem beneath the Manhattan brownstone where couples toasted milestones and deals were sealed in whispers. Most patrons arrived in pairs or packs, draped in elegance. This man looked forged from a different era entirely. He wore a dark navy coat that likely cost more than Amira's rent, cut so precisely it moved like liquid shadow. His salt and pepper hair was neatly trimmed, framing a face etched with quiet command, strong lines, unyielding mouth, eyes that looked storm gray in the golden glow. And those eyes were currently locked on Preston. Not with mild interest, with something far more lethal. Amira caught the stare by accident when she reached for her water glass. The man's gaze flicked to her for just a moment. She saw something spark across his features. Something that might have been empathy or perhaps just calculation before snapping back to Preston with predatory precision. He'd heard everything.
Of course he had.
Preston had been practically broadcasting. Amira felt heat rush to her face. Bad enough to endure this hell. Worse to have an audience. She tried to fold herself smaller in the booth, wishing she could vanish into the grapevine carvings. Maybe if she stayed silent, stayed still, the nightmare would fade. Preston would cool off. They'd finish the meal. And maybe, just maybe, by the time they got home, he'd have moved on. She knew better, but hope was a stubborn thing. "I'm going to the restroom," Preston announced, tossing his napkin onto the table. He leaned in close as he stood, his breath hot against her ear. "Don't even think about going anywhere." As if she would, as if she could. He strode away, and Amira exhaled for what felt like the first time in an hour. That's when the man from the adjacent booth moved. He didn't ask permission, didn't introduce himself. He simply lifted his wine glass, something deep red and vintage, and slid into Preston's empty seat as if it had always been his. Amira's head snapped up. "What are you?" "My name is Roman." His voice was low, resonant with an Italian undercurrent that fit the restaurant like a glove. "And you need to listen very carefully because your fiancé will be back in approximately 2 minutes. Her heart slammed. "Please, you don't understand. If he sees you here, he won't lay a hand on you tonight." The certainty in his voice made her pause. There was no hesitation there. No debate, just ironclad fact. "You don't know that," Amira whispered. "You don't know him. I know men like him." Roman's gray eyes held hers. "I've known hundreds. They target someone resilient, someone vibrant, and they chip away piece by piece until there's nothing left but compliance." Something about the way he said it, so clinical, so intimate with the blueprint, made Amira's throat close. "I'm fine," she said automatically. It was what she always said, what she'd been saying to her brother, her friends, the co-worker who'd once eyed the tension in her shoulders. Really, I'm fine. It's just he gets stressed sometimes, but he means every word. Roman leaned forward slightly. And it will get worse. You know this already.
She did.
God help her.
She did.
Why do you care? Roman's gaze flicked toward the restrooms, then back to her, the storm gray of his eyes unreadable. Because I've seen what happens when the breaking point is ignored. And because tonight, fate put me one booth away. Footsteps, sharp, impatient, echoed from the hallway. Preston was returning. Roman didn't flinch. He simply rose, the movement fluid, inevitable, like a tide reclaiming the shore. By the time Preston rounded the partition, Roman was already standing between the tables, one hand in his coat pocket, the other resting lightly on the back of Amira's booth.
Casual.
Untouchable. Preston stopped short. Who the hell? Let her go, Roman said, voice low enough to slice bone. Not a request. A verdict. Preston's eyes darted from Roman to Amira, then to the two men who had materialized at Roman's flanks, broad-shouldered, silent, the kind of silent that carried weight. The restaurant had gone unnaturally still. Even Sinatra seemed to hush. Preston tried for bravado. This is a private. I said, Roman repeated, stepping forward until the space between them shrank to nothing. Take your hand off her life. Preston's mouth opened, closed. His grip on the evening, on her slipped like wet silk. Roman didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The room bent toward him the way iron filings obey a magnet. Apologize. Preston's face flushed crimson, then drained to ash. I didn't mean. Not to me. Roman's gaze flicked to Amira, softening for a single heartbeat.
To her.
The words landed like a gavel. Preston turned, shoulders folding inward. Amira, I'm sorry. Louder, Roman said. So the room remembers. I'm sorry. Preston rasped, the sound scraping out of him like gravel. Roman studied him for a long second, then leaned in, close enough that only Preston heard the whisper that followed. Whatever it was, it turned Preston's knees to water. He swayed, clutching the edge of the table. Roman straightened. With a subtle nod to the waiter hovering nearby, he murmured, Her bill. On me. A black credit card appeared between his fingers, vanished just as quickly. To his men. Escort Miss Collins home when she's ready. Door to door. No detours. Then, to Amira, soft, deliberate. Finish your lamb. You're safe now. He didn't wait for thanks. He simply walked out, coat flaring once like a raven's wing before the door swung shut behind him. The restaurant exhaled. Conversations restarted in nervous bursts. Preston stood frozen, a statue of a man who'd just seen his future rewritten in a stranger's eyes. Amira's hand shook as she set down her fork. The rosemary butter no longer smelled like comfort. It smelled like the night her mother taught her to trust her gut. She looked at the empty booth where Roman had sat, at the faint indentation in the leather cushion, and felt something inside her crack wide open, not breaking, but blooming. Fear had been her constant companion for 2 years. Tonight it had a rival. Outside, through the frosted glass, a black SUV idled at the curb. The rear window lowered just enough for storm gray eyes to meet hers across the distance. Roman was inside, and he hadn't left. Dear viewers, before we watch Amira and Roman step into the empire they're quietly building, one forged in blood, loyalty, and the kind of love that survives gunfire, I need to ask you something. Where are you listening to this story right now? Curled up in bed? On the subway, stealing glances between stops? Or at your desk, pretending to work while your heart races for a woman who finally chose herself? Drop a comment below and tell me where you're tuning in from. And if you're hooked on this tale of a graphic designer from Queens who walked into a mafia boss's world with nothing but a broken heart and the courage to leave, hit that subscribe button and like this video. I drop new chapters of dark, emotional mafia romance every day, and you don't want to miss what happens next with Amira, Roman, and the war they're about to finish together. Now let's see how one night of rescue turns into a lifetime of power. The window descended another inch. Roman's voice carried through the night air, velvet over steel. Miss Collins. A moment. Nothing more. Amira's pulse stuttered. The restaurant door behind her felt miles away. Preston's ashen face still burned in her memory. She glanced at the bodyguards flanking the entrance, silent sentinels, then at the open SUV door. Black leather interior, city lights flickering across tinted glass. Safe or cage? She couldn't tell. Curiosity won. She stepped off the curb. The door shut with a soft, final click. Warmth enveloped her. Heated seats, faint cedar cologne. The low hum of AV8 idling like a sleeping panther. Roman sat opposite, coat unbuttoned, tie loosened just enough to hint at the man beneath the myth. I'm not in the habit of explaining myself, he began, but tonight demands it. I heard every word at that table. Threats like his aren't idle. They're blueprints. Amira hugged her purse to her chest. You don't know Preston. I know his type. Roman's fingers drummed, once on his knee. Old money, newer vices. Hale Enterprises funnels cash through shell companies in the Caymans. Daddy's board seat keeps the SEC blind. Boys like Preston learn early. Consequences are for other people. Her breath caught. How? Information is currency. I trade in it. His gaze flicked to her wrist, the faint red marks blooming beneath her sleeve. He's careful. No bruises above the cuff. Yet. Amira's phone buzzed. She flinched. Unknown number. You'll regret embarrassing me. The screen trembled in her hand. Roman's jaw flexed, a muscle ticking like a countdown. Men like him escalate after losing face, he said. Tonight was a crack in the dam. She stared at the text until the letters blurred. 2 years of excuses, of he's stressed, he'll change, I can fix this. All of it crumbled under the weight of 8 words. Roman leaned forward, elbows on knees. I can make the crack a canyon, but only if you're honest. No more, I'm fine. Tell me how long. The dam broke. It started with comments, she whispered. My designs were cute. My laugh too loud. Then the rules. Where I could go, who I could text. Last month he threw my laptop because a client emailed after 9. Her voice cracked. I thought the ring meant security. It just locked the cage. Roman listened without pity, only calculation. When she finished, he nodded once. Protection isn't charity. It's a contract. You give truth, I give safety. Starting tonight. The SUV glided through Manhattan's neon arteries, stopping at her Queens walk-up. Roman scanned the street, eyes cataloging shadows. His driver killed the engine. Stay here, he ordered. He moved like smoke. Up the stoop, key from the super's box. She hadn't noticed in palm. 30 seconds later he returned, face carved from granite. Front locks scratched. Fresh tool marks. Someone was here in the last hour. Amira's stomach plummeted. Preston. Or someone he pays to finish what he starts. Roman's hand settled on the door handle. You're not going inside alone. Ever again. Roman's gloved fingers traced the doorframe. Splinters curled like peeled skin. The deadbolt hung loose, brass teeth gnawed by a pick. Less than an hour, he murmured. He was waiting for you. Amira's knees buckled against the hallway wall. The air smelled of sawdust and her own panic. Roman caught her elbow, steady, impersonal, then signaled. 2 shadows detached from the stairwell, moving with the silence of men paid to be ghosts. They breached the apartment in under 10 seconds. Lights flicked on. Drawers sighed open. A closet door creaked. Amira hovered on the threshold, pulse in her throat, until one bodyguard emerged holding a silver cufflink between thumb and forefinger. Bedside table, he said. Initials PH. The monogram glinted like an accusation. Amira's breath hitched. She saw it. Preston letting himself in with the spare key she'd never retrieved, pacing her tiny living room, rehearsing the punishment he'd promised. The cufflink dropped for her to find, or for the police, if she didn't come home alone. Her sob was soundless. Not terror. Recognition. The cage had teeth, and they'd been bared while she ate lamb and rosemary butter. Roman's voice cut the haze. You're not staying here. I have nowhere. You have me. He didn't wait for consent. A nod, and the bodyguards flanked her, guiding her back to the SUV. The city blurred, bridges, tunnels, the Hudson glittering like broken glass, until the car ascended a private ramp into a tower she didn't recognize. The penthouse swallowed sound. Marble veins glowed under recessed lights. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed Manhattan kneeling 30 stories below. Steel shutters hummed at Roman's command, sealing them inside a fortress disguised as opulence. A single bedroom waited, crisp linens, no personal traces, a safe room behind the headboard. Amira stood in the doorway, clutching her purse like a life raft. This is insane. Insane is dying for a man's pride. Roman loosened his cufflinks, identical to the one now sealed in an evidence bag downstairs. Sleep. Tomorrow we plan. He left without another word. The lock engaged with a soft click. She expected nightmares. Instead, exhaustion dragged her under the moment her head touched the pillow. For the first time in 2 years, no footsteps paced outside her door. No voice hissed through the dark. Just the low thrum of the city, muffled by bulletproof glass. Morning crept in gray and quiet. Amira woke to sunlight on silk sheets and a phone on the nightstand that wasn't hers. One new voicemail. Preston's voice, oily with rage. You think he can protect you from me? Enjoy your borrowed time, Amira. I know where you sleep. The line went dead. Down the hall, Roman was already pouring coffee, storm-gray eyes fixed on the city sprawling beneath them. He hadn't slept either. Roman thumbed the speaker. Preston's voice slithered out, venom dipped in entitlement. Enjoy your borrowed time, Amira. I know where you sleep. The message ended with a click that echoed like a gun's safety. Roman's eyes narrowed to slits. Listen to the breathing, he said, rewinding 3 seconds. Shallow, rapid. Cocaine courage. He's high on rage, and whatever his dealer cut last night. He killed a playback. Spiraling. Amira's coffee trembled in her grip. He never used to. Moneyberry skeletons. Roman cut in. Hale's senior launders through 3 continents. Junior samples the product. Coke, girls, whatever dulls the void. Tonight he's off leash. He set the phone down like evidence. Unpredictable is worse than cruel. Silence stretched. Amira stared at the marble island between them. I thought if I loved him enough. You cannot fix a man who enjoys breaking you. The words landed flat, surgical. No cruelty, just truth. She fled the kitchen, needing distance. The penthouse unfolded like a museum of controlled power, a study with locked drawers, a gym smelling of leather and steel, a hallway lined with black and white photographs, Roman younger, standing beside men whose faces had been redacted with black bars. One frame showed a woman with his eyes. Her smile was soft, the only warmth in the corridor. In the kitchen, Roman cracked eggs one-handed, sleeves rolled to the elbow, revealing a faded tattoo of a raven clutching a rosary. The domesticity Jared, Mafia boss whisking frittata like Sunday brunch. He slid a plate toward her without comment. Spinach, pecorino, a whisper of truffle oil. She ate on autopilot, tasting safety for the first time. Footsteps in the foyer. 2 new bodyguards, different shift, same silence. One handed Roman a tablet. He signed with a stylus, then dismissed them. Amira set her fork down. You can't just assign me shadows. I already did. Calm, unapologetic. That's control. Protection is not control. He turned, forearms braced on the counter. Preston controlled your wardrobe, your laughter, your sleep.
I don't need to.
My men keep you breathing. You keep your choices. The distinction pierced her. She opened her mouth, closed it. The city sparkled beyond the windows, indifferent. Roman's phone vibrated. He read the screen, jaw tightening. Preston just sat down with the Kozlov crew. Brighton Beach. They traffic more than drugs. Retribution's their specialty. He met her eyes. He's not coming alone anymore. The private dining room at Il Fiore smelled of aged Chianti and cigar smoke veiled by orchids. Crystal chandeliers dripped light over a table of 12, Roman's inner circle and 3 Russian oligarchs whose smiles never reached their eyes. Amira sat to Roman's right, silk dress the color of midnight, borrowed but tailored to her frame like a dare. A waiter poured Barolo. She lifted the glass with steady fingers. No trembling tonight. Across the table, Viktor Kuznetsov, silver hair, sharp grin, leaned forward. Roman, you bring a designer to a negotiation? We discuss ports, not patterns. Amira met his gaze. Ports need branding. Last quarter your containers sat 3 extra days in customs because the manifest looked like a ransom note. I can fix that. A ripple of surprise. Roman's mouth twitched, approval, not rescue. Kuznetsov chuckled. Pretty and precise. Dangerous combination. The conversation shifted to tonnage and tariffs. Amira listened, spoke when the numbers aligned. Let Roman's silence do the heavy lifting. When another associate tried to corner her with a backhanded compliment about decorative guests, Roman's hand settled on her wrist, brief, grounding, then withdrew. She handled the rest herself. Later, excusing herself to the powder room, she caught the whisper near the coat check. Hale's paying triple. Wants Caruso's route tonight. Outsiders, not our crew.
Her blood iced.
She slipped back to the table, leaned into Roman's ear. Preston hired trackers. They're on you. His expression didn't change, but the temperature around him dropped 10 degrees. He signaled the maitre d' with 2 fingers. The room's energy tightened like a garrote. Roman stood, buttoning his jacket. Gentleman duty calls. To Amira, low. You did well. Now, we finish this. Outside, the valet line glittered under awning lights. Roman's driver pulled the SUV to the curb. As Amira stepped into the night, a familiar charcoal sedan idled across the street. Preston behind the wheel, knuckles white, eyes locked on the restaurant doors. He was waiting. The night air carried exhaust and the metallic tang of coming rain. Roman exited Il Fiore first, coat open, hands loose at his sides. Two bodyguards fanned out like wings. The valet froze mid-step. Across the street, Preston lurched from his sedan, tie askew, pupils blown wide with liquor and fury. You think you can just take her? Preston's voice cracked, too loud for the quiet block.
She's mine.
Bought and paid. Roman didn't slow. She was never yours. Preston's gaze snapped past him. Amira stepped onto the sidewalk, heels steady, chin high. The sight punched the air from his lungs. Amira, he started, then snarled. Get in the car. No, the single word rang clear, no tremor. We're done. The ring, the apartment, the life you planned without me, keep it. I expect nothing from you again. Preston's face twisted. He lunged, fingers clawing for her wrist. Two shadows intercepted, arms like steel cables pinning him to the hood of his own car. The metal dented under his cheek. You ungrateful, he thrashed, spit flecking the paint. I'll lock you in that apartment until you beg. I'll carve my name where no one sees. You think this thug scares me? Roman moved then, a single step that silenced the street. 10 feet, he said, voice soft as a blade sliding from silk. Come within 10 feet of her again. You don't walk away. You don't crawl. You disappear. Sirens threaded the distance, two unmarked sedans screeching to the curb. Plainclothes officers spilled out, badges flashing under streetlights. Roman's allies, badges bought or borrowed. Preston bucked against the cuffs, snapping shut. This isn't over, Amira, he screamed as they dragged him backward. I'll find you. I always find you. The sedan door slammed. Tires peeled away, red taillights bleeding into the dark. Roman turned to her, storm gray eyes scanning for cracks. Finding none, Amira exhaled, the city suddenly louder, horns, distant thunder, her own heartbeat. She had faced the monster, and the monster had blinked. The penthouse study smelled of leather and old paper. A single lamp carved gold across Roman's desk. The city beyond the windows was a silent witness. Amira sat opposite him, knees tucked beneath her, the borrowed silk dress traded for jeans and one of his black cashmere sweaters. It swallowed her, but she didn't feel small. Roman slid a photograph across the mahogany. A woman in sepia, high cheekbones, wary smile. My mother, he said. She wore long sleeves in July. Said the bruises were from cooking. My father called it discipline. His voice stayed level, but the lamp's light caught the fracture in his eyes. I was 12 when I put him in the ground. Took me 20 years to stop hearing her apologies. Amira's fingers brushed the photo's edge. I'm sorry. Don't be. It's why I don't ignore men like Preston. He opened a slim folder. Hale's senior bankrolled the Moretti crew, my first war. Blood money built their towers. Junior learned early. Women are collateral. Another page turned. Police reports, medical records, NDAs thick as bricks. 3 ex-girlfriends, bruised ribs, cracked orbitals, signatures bought with 6-figure settlements. One name circled in red, Amira Collins, pending. Her stomach lurched. He planned this. Pattern, not impulse. Roman's tone was clinical, but his hand hovered near hers, not quite touching. You were the upgrade. Beautiful, talented, black. A trophy to break in private while the board applauded his charity galas. The words detonated. Years of if I'm quieter, if I'm better, collapsed into white-hot rage. Amira stood so fast the chair rolled back. I shrank for him. I deleted clients, friends, my own voice. Her voice cracked like ice. I let him rewrite me. Roman rose too slow. Then rewrite yourself. He gestured to a laptop on the credenza. Your portfolio's already loaded. New email, new cloud, new bank account, untraceable. Start with the Kozlov contract you pitched tonight. They want you, not me. She stared at the screen, cursor blinking like a heartbeat. You're giving me a job? I'm giving you a battlefield. Fight on your terms. Silence stretched, thick with unspoken gravity. She stepped closer, close enough to see the faint scar slicing his left eyebrow. Why me, Roman? Really? His jaw flexed. Because no one saved her. A breath. And because when you looked at him tonight, you didn't flinch. You burned. The air between them crackled. Want. Wariness. The slow fuse of something neither named. His phone buzzed, shattering the moment. He read the text, face hardening to granite. Preston's out. Bribed a guard. Vanished 40 minutes ago. Amira's pulse spiked, but her chin lifted. Let him come. Roman's smile was small, lethal, proud. He won't like what finds him first. The penthouse lights dimmed to security amber. Roman's phone lit with a single line. Garage breach. One intruder. Armed. He was already moving, coat half on, gun tucked low. Stay here. Lock the study. Amira's pulse thundered. She followed to the hallway anyway, bare feet silent on marble. The wall of windows showed the garage ramp 30 floors below, headlights slicing chaos. Preston's sedan rammed the gate. Sparks showered. 2 guards tackled him as he rolled out, chrome pistol flashing. Gunshots cracked, muzzle flares strobing concrete. A bodyguard staggered, clutching his shoulder. Preston broke free, sprinting for the service elevator, blood on his sleeve, eyes wild. Amira's breath fogged the glass. Roman took the stairs 3 at a time. Elevator doors slid open on the garage level. Preston spun, gun raised, too late. Roman's forearm smashed the wrist. The pistol clattered. A knee to the gut folded Preston in half. Roman's fists were precise, merciless. Jaw, ribs, temple. Each blow a sentence in a language Preston finally understood. Preston spat blood, crawling toward the private lift that led to the penthouse. She's mine. Roman seized his collar, dragged him back. Touch her, and I erase you. Preston's laugh gurgled. He yanked a knife from his boot, lunged past Roman toward the closing elevator. The blade scraped steel inches from Amira's reflection in the mirrored doors. Roman caught his wrist, twisted until bones snapped. The knife clanged away. One final punch. Lights out. Sirens wailed up the ramp. Uniforms flooded in, real ones this time. Body cam footage, the wounded guard's statement, Preston's prints on the gun. Enough to bury him for decades. They cuffed him unconscious, dragged him into the rain. Preston's eyes fluttered open as the wagon doors slammed. Through the window he locked on Amira, high above, and mouthed, "No one will." Amira stood trembling. Relief. Rage. The seismic shift of a life reclaimed. Roman's silhouette filled the doorway behind her, blood on his knuckles, storm gray eyes soft only for her. "It's over," he said. She nodded, but the city lights blurred. Over? Maybe. But the echo of "no one will" lingered like smoke. The key slid home like a held breath released. Amira stepped into her queen's apartment, sunlight striping the floorboards, dust motes drifting like slow applause. The bedside table still bore the faint circle where Preston's cufflink had lain. She opened the window. October air swept out the ghosts. Roman's text buzzed. Outside. No pressure. She smiled, small but real, and left the door unlocked. He filled the frame minutes later, coat unbuttoned, hands in pockets, eyes scanning corners out of habit. Place looks smaller in daylight. "It is," she said, without the fear taking up space. He nodded, stayed by the door. "You good?" "I'm starting." She set a box on the counter. Old sketchbooks, the ring in its velvet tomb. Therapy Tuesdays. Brunch with my brother Sunday. Client pitch Monday. A breath. I kept the Kozlov job. Roman's mouth curved, pride without possession. "You protected yourself, Amira. I only stood behind you." The words settled warm in her chest. She crossed the room, close enough to catch cedar and gun oil. "Thank you for seeing me when I couldn't." His knuckles brushed hers, electric, deliberate, then gone. "You were always there, just buried." Weeks blurred into routine. Subway rides without flinching, laughter that didn't apologize, designs that carried her name alone. Roman's shadow never loomed. It simply existed. Texts at 2 a.m. when nightmares clawed. Coffee dropped on her stoop before dawn pitches. She paid her own rent, chose her own wine, let herself want the storm-gray eyes without shame. Carmines glowed under November dusk, Sinatra crooning through the speakers. Roman leaned against the brick exterior, hands in pockets, city lights catching the scar on his eyebrow. Amira stepped beside him, curls loose, coat open to the chill. No trembling. "He didn't save me," she whispered. "He reminded me I was worth saving." Roman looked at her, eyes softer than she'd ever seen. And now, Amira, what do you want? Dear viewers, so what do you think? Did Amira and Roman, and the life she reclaimed, earn the peace they fought for? Could you walk away from a cage disguised as love, risk everything for the woman staring back in the mirror? What makes someone a real protector, a real partner, a real future?
Drop a comment and tell me.
Have you ever been someone's Roman? The one who heard the threat across a crowded restaurant and refused to let it land? The one who stood in the garage with blood on his knuckles because her heartbeat mattered more than his empire? Or have you needed someone to see you that way? Past the shrinking, past the apologies, straight to the fire you forgot you carried? We all need people who choose us when the city burns, who park outside in the rain because a voicemail isn't enough, who remind us that safety isn't a ring, it's the space to breathe. If you love the story about a graphic designer dragged into her own war, about a Don who found his conscience in a booth at Carmine's, about a woman who discovered freedom isn't given, it's taken one fearless step at a time, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. I post new high-stakes romantic thrillers every day, and you don't want to miss what's waiting in Manhattan. Like this video if you crave more stories about broken engagements turned into battlegrounds, about enemies who become the only safe house, about women who rewrite their own endings in blood and rosemary butter, about one quiet let her go that shifts an entire skyline. Your likes tell me you're hungry for real love, dangerous, deliberate, unbreakable love. This is Blissful Stories, where cages are dismantled table by table, where a single cufflink can bury a legacy, and where the best love stories begin with someone brave enough to stand when every instinct screams kneel. Until tomorrow, remember, you don't have to be owned to be found. Sometimes all it takes is one stranger in the next booth, one cracked deadbolt, one whispered, "You're safe now." Be someone's Roman. See someone's worth. End someone's war. Now go lock your doors and choose yourself.